Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. Oh boy, that music just haunts me throughout my days. I hear it in my sleep on Sunday nights, but that's okay. Let's see here. I got to try something out. Have I got? Yes. Okay. Normally I can hear my microphone through my headset and I can't right now, and I have it turned on. I don't know if maybe I need to adjust my volume or what, but it was driving me kind of nuts. Anyhow, you don't care about that. Let's see. We've got a few things to talk about today, some unfinished business and what have you. I kind of caught myself short here. Um, I was in the process of trying to go on a website and get some part numbers for y'all, and I didn't get it done in time. But so I'm going to try to go by memory. If I get it wrong, um, you know why. um, on the unfinished business category, we have a couple of things. Last week, I made mention of a downcut spiral tapered ball nose bit. I was mistaken. It's not a tapered ball nose downcut. It's a standard ball nose downcut spiral. It's made by Amana Tool. You can get them on the Tools Today website. And this is the part that I was trying to, I'm going by memory, okay? The part number I want to say is 46476 through 78. Those are downcut spiral standard ball nose bits. And they come in 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, and 1/2 inch diameter shank sizes. So those were the downcut ball nose bits, standard ball nose, not tapered ball nose. So that can happen. Oh boy. Let's see here. In other unfinished business, Mario Montoya says on the sticky epoxy update, decided to go ahead and mill out the reveal layer after 5 days. It turned out just great. Didn't even gum up my bit. Okay, I was going to ask you about that, Mario, if it gummed up the bit or if you were able to salvage the bit and or the project. So that's good to know. For those who don't remember, last week Mario was asking about the epoxy that he mixed up was supposed to be 1-to-1 ratio by volume, but he mixed it up by weight, and the ratio was supposed to be 1 part resin 0.85 hardener by weight, because the resin is heavier than the hardener is. It's more dense. The result was he had too much hardener and it didn't cure properly. It was still soft and gummy. So that is basically what's been going on with that. It happens. It happens to all of us. But you said you waited 5 days and then went ahead and milled it out. At that point, if it's still sticky and still soft, and here's the way to tell: take a thumbnail and just go to a corner or somewhere and press into it. If you can dent that resin, especially after 5 days, with your thumbnail without putting a lot of force on it, if you can dent that resin, or if it still feels tacky, then it's time to cut your losses and just go ahead and mill it out and start over. But glad to hear that you got the project done, Mario. Really glad to hear that. Resin is expensive, and I'm finding out just how expensive it is. Without going into a lot of detail, the normal resin that we use for, it depends on what you're doing. Most countertop, bar top, tabletop resins are meant to be poured roughly 1/8 of an inch or shallower. Some of them can go up to 1/4 of an inch, about 6 millimeters. Some of them can go up to 1/2 inch, about 12 millimeters. But you really need to check with the epoxies manufacturer because that does matter. It matters big time. If you're going to go anything more than that, anything thicker than that, you need a casting resin. And I said I wasn't going to get super detailed, but it all comes down to heat. The curing process with doesn't matter what brand of epoxy or what type of resin, polyester versus anything else, the curing process creates heat. It's a chemical reaction. If you try to cast some of that epoxy that's made to be poured thin, if you try to cast it thick, it's going to build up so much heat that your casting is going to crack and warp and cause all kinds of problems, no end to the problems. That's if you don't have curing issues and end up like Mario with something that's really super sticky because it didn't. So you have to buy an epoxy that was made for casting or for deep pours. And I am finding out that basically put as kind of a standard rule of thumb, deep pour epoxies are a minimum double the price of your countertop, tabletop epoxies, sometimes up to 3 times the price. I looked at some of these deep pour epoxies and about died. There's a holy cow. And we're talking about, a 1-gallon kit of a tabletop or countertop epoxy you can get for $55, $60. A 1-gallon kit of a deep pour epoxy will start at about $115 and work their way up. Some of them are up to $300. It's outrageous. So you've got to be careful and be mindful of your mix ratios when you're talking about something that expensive. I mean, because, man. Okay, well, anyway, let's see. Let's also get back here to Vortex 8 was having some issues last week with the inputs in his 3D modeling tab in the properties. He was having some issues with that. He did get a hold of Vectric support, and they are going back and forth to troubleshoot the issue. But no luck for now. Maybe a solution next week. But then you also said something here that I don't remember if you said last week or not. And that was, you said today that they seem to also have a problem with receiving emails from your iPhone and from your Mac computer. You need to know that Vectric Software is Windows software. They do not make a Mac version, and as far as I know, there are no plans to make a Mac version. And that comes down to licensing and this, that, and the other, and what have you. And I'm not going to get into that argument. Depending upon which Windows emulator you're using, be it Parallels or something else, there may be something behind the scenes causing issues with some cells in some fields. I don't know if you told them that you're running this on a Mac, but that may be part of the issue. They may recommend a different Windows emulator. So if you haven't let them know that you're running this on a Mac, I certainly would, because that may be a huge factor. So let's see here now. We do have, you guys are coming up with some good questions, and I'm getting them and I'm marking them to come to. Okay. Let me get this real quick because it's an easy answer. Fanny Pretorius wants to know, I want to know what settings must I use to make a PCB for electronics, printed circuit board. I have an Atom Stack X20 laser attached to my CNC router, and I use Mach 4 with Aspire desktop, Aspire 11. I'm going to say right now that I'm going to be ignorant on this because I have never done any printed circuit boards. Now, I don't understand if you want the settings for your laser or if you are talking about feeds and speeds for an end mill. From everything I understand, and again, I've never done it myself, but I've talked to people who have. From everything I understand, if you're talking about drilling holes with an end mill, it's roughly the same feeds and speeds as if you were using a hardwood. Okay. You may have to do a little bit of adjustment depending upon your machine or the end mills that you're using. But printed circuit boards tend to use very, very tiny end mills. So we're talking about single digit plunge rates. We're talking about very slow feed rates. Even using a touch plate with some of these micro tools will just shatter it. So we're talking about very slow feed rates and very low plunge rates. If you're talking about the laser, I don't own a laser, so I can't help you there at all, and I apologize for that. So, okay, all right, my mistake there, Vortex 8. I'm not using an emulator. I have a Windows laptop that I'm running my software on, but sometimes I send email through iPhone and was trying to communicate with them that way, but found out that they could not receive the emails I was sending on my iPhone to them. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't know anything about that. I've been a Windows guy since 1997 and I've never looked back. So I can't help with that. I used to be pretty tech savvy, but now, oh hell no. Excuse me. Let's see. Adam Tinkers says, I'm trying to use one of my Vectric test files and it won't let me save G-Code. Says both use tool number 1, but the geometry ... Have you run into this? Yes. And this is a very simple fix. Let me go ahead and bring up Aspire and then we'll get into it. Let me get into my tool database over here. And I'll pick, a 1/4 inch end mill. Okay. What it sounds like what you're attempting to do when you go to save G-Code is you're attempting to save multiple tool paths as one file. Okay. And what they're talking about, both use tool number 1 is this right here, tool number. Okay. Now, this 1/4 inch end mill is set at tool number 2 for some reason. And I don't remember why I have this set at tool number 2. But if I come up here to this 0.25 inch 2-flute end mill, it's tool number 1. They're both 1/4 inch end mills, but the geometry is either slightly different or I have a feed rate set different. So I want to make that distinction. I want one to be able to plunge deeper than the other. So I have changed the tool number, letting me know that it's time for a tool change. I use this in situations where I want to use both a down cut and an up cut within G-Code. I will put a tool change in there on purpose. Now, if you look at, let's see here, I've got this 1/4" end mill that is tool number 1. I come up here to this 1/4" ball nose. No, not that one. This one. Okay, that one's tool number 6. That one works out just fine. Let's try my 90-degree V-bit. It is also tool number 1, but the geometry is completely different from that 1/4" end mill up here. So that's what that error message is trying to tell you. They are both listed as tool number 1, but the geometry is different, so it won't let you save the G-code. The way to fix this is, let's say you're over here and you're doing a profile toolpath, for instance. I have, for instance, on this toolpath, I have a 1/2" end mill selected. I'll come over here to the edit function and just change the tool number right there. That will let me save the G-code, but it will also put a tool change in that G-code. Personally, I don't like to do this. What I prefer to do is close this. When I go to save my tool paths, I will select all the tool paths that use the same bit and save and put a check mark next to them and save those visible tool paths to one file. So all of my 1/4" end mill except profile cutout will go in one G-code file. All of my V-bits toolpaths will go in another G-code file. I always do my profile cutout last. That way, I always do it separately, and it's the last one that I run. That way I don't make a mistake and cut out the project before I'm done doing other operations. So the last thing you want is a piece coming loose. So, let's see here. I was assuming Vectric could save multiple tool changes for carbide motion for Shapeoko to a single file. It can. What it's telling you is that you have 2 tools listed as tool 1. So that's when you go into, let's go back here. That's when you select the tool, go into edit, and you change that tool number so that you can put all those multiple files in there. They just have to have a different tool number. They can't both be tool 1. So if you put your end mill as tool 1 and your V-bit as tool 2 and your tapered ball nose as tool 3, it'll do as many tool changes as you want, provided your post processor can handle it. They just can't have the same tool number. That's what I'm saying. So let's see here. Get down there. Let's go back over here. Let's see. Jay Heeman says, good afternoon. I have a question about flattening a slab on my Avid CNC. I'm using V-carve. Is there a way to make the flattened bit only cut in one direction? Well, generally speaking, when you're flattening a slab, you're using a pocket tool path. This is what I've been doing most of the day. Okay. Well, most of the day, most of the week. Who am I kidding? Because I'm gluing up panels to that are wider than my planer. So the can you get it to plane in just one direction? It would be difficult. I'm sure there's a way to do it. But personally, what I do, let's say for the sake of argument, this is how I do my slab flattening. Okay. I have here a piece of material that's 12 inches by 12 inches. This is just an example. Okay. What I'll do is I'll come along and I will draw a rectangle that's bigger than my material. Okay. And because I have my XY datum position set to the center for this demonstration, I'll want to center that over X0, Y0. I want square corners. And my surfacing bit has a 2-inch cutting diameter. So what I want to do is I want to get that bit to come off of each edge of my material. So I want to make this rectangle 1 inch wider than the material. So it comes off of the edge by a 1/2 inch. So I'll set my width of this rectangle and I let the calculators do all the math for me. I go X plus 1 equals, and it enters my X measurement. Now I surface in the Y direction. I find I get a better surface finish that way. I want all of my X movements where it's going to be moving over. I want all of that to happen off of the material so I don't get tool marks. So with a 2-inch diameter bit, I want it to come off of the material by a 1/2 inch on this end of the material and up here on this end of the material. So I'll set my height in Y as Y plus 5 inches equals. And that sets the size of my rectangle, and I click create. I can close that, select it, and I align it to the center just in case it didn't do that automatically. Come over, and now I want to create my pocket for surfacing. I I surface at 10 thousandths of an inch per pass. That's just my choice. I know how to get in and kind of work in Mach 4 to change that. But I set up the toolpath to go 10 thousandths of an inch per pass. Using my 2-inch bit, I do a raster strategy with a raster angle of 90 degrees. That's going to make the bit go back and forth in Y with no profile pass. Then that's all I need to do. I'll calculate the tool path, and here's what I end up with. My bit's going to wrap it over to the beginning of this tool path, and it's going to plunge down off of the material. Then it's going to come down this direction, off of the material, then make that X move. So it's going to go back and forth like so. That's how I want to surface materials. Let me grab this piece real quick here. And make it all about me. I surfaced this piece this morning, and that's the surface finish I got. There, I have done no sanding, no cleanup at all. That's fresh off of the machine. I get a beautiful finish using that method. There are no machine marks, there are no milling marks, no tool marks at all. Now, you will notice, say right up here, a little line right there. Imagine you're mowing your lawn You push your lawnmower in one direction, turn around and come back the other direction. And you keep doing that the whole length of your lawn. If you look at it, you'll notice that some stripes are a little bit different color than other stripes. That's because of the direction you were pushing that mower in. The blade was still spinning in the same direction, but you were pushing the mower back and forth like so. You will get that. But about 15 seconds with some 220 grit sandpaper, and that's gone. I mean, I have no complaints about that bit. Yes, it was expensive. It's about $160. But when I get a finish like that and I don't have to spend 4 hours sanding it, I'll take it. So let me go put this down. I have been using that. I've been using that router bit for probably, well, since February of this year. I bought it to surface that pirate multicolored epoxy inlay. And I bought it to surface that with and just absolutely fell in love with it. And I've been using heck out of it, mainly to do things like this, surfacing slabs or surfacing glued up panels that are too wide to go through my planer or too small to safely be planed. Because if you've got a 4-inch by 4-inch block of wood, that's too small to go through a planer. Somebody's going to get hurt. So I can stick it down on the CNC bed, and I don't even create a tool path for that. I just do it manually. Now, Bob Heltebridle came up with a great alternate here, and that is you could draw straight vectors spaced to allow an overlap of your bit with the starting points at the same end. That is an excellent point. In fact, we can explore that a little bit later. But first, I want to say welcome aboard to Roger Brown. Thank you for becoming a channel member. You are joining a very, very good group of folks. I do a members only live stream on Monday evenings, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. If you go to the community tab here on my YouTube channel, you'll find a link to it. Welcome aboard, and I hope to see you tomorrow evening. Let's see here. I got to get into other questions, then we'll come back if we have time, and we'll get into trying Bob's suggestion with the profile toolpath. Almost hit the wrong button. Let's get in here. Phoenician Artisan. If you're not following the Phoenician Artisan over on Instagram, number one, shame on you. Number two, do so. Get over there and check out the Phoenician Artisan. Doing some incredible stuff over there. Some awesome, awesome projects. Wants to know, can you comment on flattening a long slab on a CNC using the tiling function? Not using the tiling function. However, I've never tiled a slab flattening or any kind of a panel flattening tool path. I've not needed to yet, but it should work just like any other method. The only thing I would ask is, do you really need to use tiling? I mean, you could create two different tool paths and just either spin around or flip, however you want to do it, your piece. What I have done, for instance, on this panel here, the one I just showed, I did surface both sides. I put it down, attached it down, and surfaced the one side. Then when that tool path was finished, I made an adjustment in my controller software and told the it went back to its home position, safe Z position. I told the controller that it was actually 20 thousandths higher. Then I took my piece off, flipped it over, fastened it back down. Then I didn't even have to reset Z0. Then I could just cycle start G-code and it went and it surfaced the other side. If you were to surface a slab that's longer than your machine, you could surface whatever area you could cut and then lift, not change your any of your settings, your X, Y, or Z0, pull the piece through and then cycle start G-code again. That Z will be at the same level. That's what concerns me, is changing things around, moving them around, and being at the same level. Because if you use a touch plate to set your Z0, so. And Bob and John both bring up good points. Is it a pass-through type project too long for the length of the bed? Or is it something that you could do, tile it side to side? I mean, I think if you have to do tiling, it would probably be too big one direction or the other, and then you'd have to figure it out. But I don't see a need to tile it side to side. If your machine is wide enough for that piece to fit there, you don't need to tile. It would have to be passed through. My concern, what if the slab is warped more in one area? I deal with that all the time, and basically I set my Z0 to the high point and just let it go. Yeah, it's going to cut air for a little bit, but I've got time. If you don't have time, an electric hand plane, shave that high end down until it's close to level, and that'll end up with that'll end up saving you a lot of machine time on that. Yeah, Michael Mazalik says tiling and surfacing is no different than a simple pocket. Right. I knew that was going to be the case, Michael, but I was getting more into what the Phoenician artisan is talking about. Generally speaking, when we're tiling, we're talking about material that's already been at least flattened, S2S. Maybe sheet goods or something like that. But when you're talking about a slab that was cut on a chainsaw, it could be all over the place. So I shim and attach it to a piece of plywood and do all that stuff. But you're still going to end up with high and low spots. And I get out my electric hand plane and try to shave it down a little bit to save me machine time. So Todd HCNC says, I think it would be hard to slab in the plane when you move it to the next tile. It might be, but if you're doing it one pass at a time, and it depends on how much you're taking it off. Like I do my surfacing, but I'm just cleaning up glue lines and making sure that everything is nice and smooth all the way across. If that's all you're doing, I mean, you would have to keep moving it back and forth so that Z stays in one plane. It's a pain in the tail end. There is no perfect one way, I guess, is what I'm saying. I tend to try to do as little of this on the machine as necessary because this takes longer than taking a hand plane and just zipping down the high spot until everything is close anyway. I mean, if I can get it within 1/8 of an inch, I have the time to do that. I have the time to let the machine run. And then, I'll set it to take, let's say, 1/4 of an inch off, but I'll set it to do it in like 11 passes. And then I'll watch, and when it gets down to where it's smooth, even if it hasn't gone that complete 1/4 inch, I can stop it because I don't need to take off more, flip it over, and then machine the other side nice and flat. So, Phoenician Artisan, look at you. Thank you very much for the super chat. I truly, truly appreciate that. I mean, wow. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Let's see here now. SS Third wants to know, why do folks use the bottom left corner of the workpiece as 00 as opposed to the actual center of the workpiece? Well, it depends on the person, and it depends on the program, the controller program you're using. It depends on the touch plate, and it depends on if you have any work offsets. I'll give you an example. Let me move this well, I'll switch over to this camera here. Oh, come on, Mark. There it is. Switch over to my other camera and point it down at the machine table. I don't know. Maybe you can see, maybe you can't see, as I make you guys seasick. There we go. Maybe you can see this line of holes up this side, this line of holes across here. These are used for alignment and registration. I can put some pins right here, for example. Then I'll use that walnut panel. I can grab this panel, put it right there against those pins, fasten it down. Then I have an offset. I have created a G55 offset I've created in Mach 4. I click onto that offset, and when I click go to work XY0, that bit's going to come right here to that corner every time. Now, if I decide not to use these alignment holes, and instead I'm going to use my touch plate to set my XY0, it has this boss built in, cast into it right here, that goes right up against the corner of the material. The bit will come down in here, touch off on the Z axis, then it'll touch inside to this edge, touch inside to this edge, and it knows where this corner of the material is. So it's not up to how well I draw a cross out here to find the center of my material, or if I've got an odd shaped piece of material that is a little bit wacky. I can put that material in this location, or I can use the touch plate to find that corner every single time. Not everybody uses that method. And if you set your XY0 to the center of your material, then beautiful. I do both. There are times I want to use the corner. There are times I want to use the center of the material. Okay. Depends on what I'm doing. For instance, well, I've got a project over here in the clamps. Let me set up that camera, change that over here. Bonk. I'll try not to make you guys seasick again. I've got a project over here in my clamping station. You can barely make it out. It's a cutting board with a chaos pattern field, and then I've put a maple border around it, and I'm adding a walnut border to it right now as we speak. When I went to trim up one area, I had one area that was really cheesing me off, so I mounted it here on my machine. Then I drew my cross, found the center, and I centered my XY datum to the middle of that field because I wanted the thickness of that maple border around that field to be even all the way around. And it was slightly offset to one side. I don't know if I got a setting wrong or something happened. So there are times where I do want it set to the center. So it isn't an either or proposition. You can do both. You just have to be careful and keep track of which method you're using for that project and at the time. So, let's see here. I hope that answers that. Let's see here. We got some good questions here. Beverly Benham says, I have a new 1/4-inch upcut end mill with a 2-inch cutting depth that is slipped out of the collet all 3 times I've used it, and it is an upcut, okay, including from a new collet and nut. No other bits slip on the same material and cut. Any ideas? Yes, it may be an issue with that particular bit. Make certain that it is actually a 1/4-inch shank and not a 6mm shank. It does make a difference. The shank diameter, a 1/4-inch, I want to say, is 6.35 millimeters. I may be wrong there. A 6mm shank will not clamp down tight enough in a 1/4-inch collet. So number one, make sure that that shank is 1/4-inch. Number two, set that bit aside and get another bit. I know it's brand new. You may be able to contact the manufacturer and send it back to them. But if it's supposed to be a 1/4-inch shank and it's slipping, send it back. Send it back to them. Now, you can measure the diameter if you've got a dial caliper or something to that effect. But if it's make sure that it is actually okay. Measured it on digital calipers 0.25. Okay, then it's odd that a 1/4-inch bit would slip. And that's the only one that slips. That's odd. Todd H. CNC says it happened to me too. Small diameter shank. I mean, if it's measuring out with digital calipers, there could be an error of plus or minus half a thou in there or something like that. Yeah, Brooks Martin is then the same thing. The bit might actually be a 6mm or 2.36-inch bit. Check with your calipers. She says she did. If it's slightly under tolerance, it should tighten down. You've tried snugging it up a little bit tighter? See, because I've not had an issue with an upcut bit slipping. I have had an issue with a downcut bit slipping. And that was 100% my fault. I just didn't get it tight enough. But I don't know what brand of bit it is, but I would try ordering a different bit from a different brand. And if you can, get a hold of that bit's manufacturer, let them know what's going on. They might just let you send it back to them and send you a new one. Because something is going on there. Something's wrong. Now, having said that, clean it up. Clean it. I use isopropyl alcohol, standard rubbing alcohol. I get down at the local grocery store. Now, of course, I can't find it. I get the 91% isopropyl alcohol. It's like $4 for a for a quart. And I clean all my bits and pay particular attention to the shank. And I use another little tip. While you're over there grabbing a quart of isopropyl alcohol, grab a denture brush. A little bit different than a toothbrush. These are nice and stiff. These are even stiffer. And clean up the bit, scrub it, then clean up the collet. I've also found that try to say this without YouTube coming back and hollering at me. Go into the sporting goods section and find a 22 caliber nylon cleaning brush. That's the easiest way to say it. And I don't have mine's in the house. And clean out the inside of that collet with the isopropyl alcohol. Blast it with can of air or with the compressor and try it. I mean, and make sure you're snugging it down. Don't make the mistake I did when I first started out. Grab hold of that bit and try to pull down on it. Because if it don't go, your hand still will. And those bits are sharp. I'm here to tell you. So let's see. Yeah, check the splines and the collet and make sure they close down properly. There is that too. There is also, but she also said that she tried it with a new collet and collet nut. So if it's just that one particular bit, I don't know that I would trust that bit. I would probably want to check with another manufacturer. I mean, I understand it is a long end mill, well, a deep cut, a long depth of cut, but and they're not cheap. I know that. But to be honest with you, whenever I'm doing something that deep, I go with a 1/2 inch end mill, but I have 1/2 inch collets for my spindle, so I have that luxury. Not everybody has that luxury. So, and I do understand that. But I mean, something is not right. And while you're at it, with the alcohol, clean out the taper inside the end of the spindle or / router, whichever you're using. So, and well, Todd HCNC does make a point. Try a different measuring tool. I mean, that is possible. It may. I mean, I've got one pair of calipers here that, I mean, that's close enough. And then I bring up my dial calipers and it's like, nope, not even close. So let's see here. Garen 234 says, when cutting the male portion of an inlay and using a clearance pass, would you recommend cutting the V-carve or the end mill first? I always cut the V-carve first on everything. The reason for that is if you have any small pieces, especially on the male of an inlay, if you have any small thin strips, let's say, on text, and you've already cleared everything out, and now that V-bit has to go around and trace around that thin piece that's standing up off of the base material, chances are it's going to chip something out or blow something up. So if you do that V-bit first, it's got the full thickness of the material to support that piece. Then I do the clearance, always on everything, if it's at all possible. I have not yet come across a scenario where I couldn't do the V-carve first, but I always run the V-bit first. That way, the material that I'm V-carving around is supported by the full thickness of the material. So, hope that answers that. Let's see. Let's see. Pedantic collet cleaning every time. It would be tempting fate to say I've never had a bit slip in a collet, so I'm not saying it. I hear you. Knock on wood. You know, I have had bits slip. It's been 100% my fault. I just didn't push down on it enough. Just didn't tighten it down enough. But that was when I was first starting out, and I'm used to a regular router. I'm not used to a CNC router. So let's see here. Steve Greer says, "Hey Mark, having a Mark III jogging issue. Router moves rapid for about an inch, then slows to the set rate. Does this on all axis every time direction is changed." Okay, it moves at the rapid rate for about an inch, then slows to your feed rate. Are you ramping in a plunge at that point? Because if you are, it's going to slow down. If you're not, you might want to check for binding. Now, the fact that it's on all axis every time, it would be odd if all of your axes were out and it was binding on all three axes. What kind of operation are you trying to run? Because again, if you're ramping in a plunge move, it will slow down to the plunge rate of the bit, whatever plunge rate you have set. And it doesn't matter how far out it is. Let's see here. Machine Dim Wood says, had a half-inch bit slip the other day. Luckily, nothing terrible happened this time. Yeah, this time. And that's me. If I can mess it up, oh man. If there's an opportunity to mess it up, because it's Murphy's Law. Nature always sides with the hidden rule, with the hidden flaw. So if I can make a mistake, I will. That's why I'm totally supported by checklists. I write everything down and I use them. Mike Mazalik says, check the G-code for feed and speed. That's true. Let me look here. I don't know if I have any G-code on, man, do I have any G-code here on this machine or on this computer rather? Yes, I do. Okay. You can, let me add this to the stream. Okay, here's a G-code file, and I don't even remember what it's for. It's for a profile. Okay, great. What you're looking for is starting right here. Okay. G00 is a rapid move. Okay. And this is going back to the machine moving an inch and then all of a sudden slowing down. This is a rapid move. It's going to move over to this position in X and this position in Y and the Z to this position. Then we're doing a G1, which is using under G-code. You see F60 right there. This is a Z movement. It's going to come down to negative 0.1875. F60 is the feed rate, 60 inches per minute. Okay. So I can look at this and I can see that this is just a plunge move. And here's G1 under G-code. It's going to move to 4.75 in Y with a feed rate of 160 inches per minute. Okay. Now from here, X0, Y0 to X 1.25, it was done at 160 inches per minute. Then it started plunging at 60 inches per minute. Check your feed rates. Check the position where this feed rate change is. Does that make any sense? If your G-code is telling it to slow down after an inch, that's why it's doing it. If you're not seeing anything odd here, then that's the way it's supposed to run. So either you might want to look at the toolpath you created, or you might want to look at adjusting your plunge rates, because that's another important thing to remember. Your machine will always move at the speed of the slowest axis, okay? So right here, for instance, we have a feed rate of 160 inches per minute, but a plunge rate of 60 inches per minute. The machine is going to move at 60 inches per minute. It's not going to try to do that 160 until that bit is down to that depth. Then it'll speed up to 160. That's one of the reasons why 3D carves take so long, is because your Z is almost always the slowest axis. And on a 3D carve, that Z is an almost constant motion. So it doesn't matter if I have my feed rate set at 200 inches per minute, but my plunge rate set at 60, all three axes are going to move at a maximum of 60 because the Z can't keep up because of that plunge rate that I set. So I hope that makes sense and I didn't just confuse the whole issue there. So I think I've got that. If that doesn't answer your question, what I would suggest, if this is just happens in jogging and it's nothing to do with G-code, let's see. If it's just jogging, let me fire up Mach 3. Now you got me curious here. Is this just when jogging? Does this happen when you're working with G-code, or is it just when you turn on the machine and start trying to move the axes? Let's hope Steve is still here. I know there's about a 30-second lag. Trying to get Mach 3 to load up here. It's taking its sweet time. Come on, you can do it. Mach 3 doesn't like this computer because I don't have a machine plugged into it. Okay, there we go. Now I can bring Mach 3 over here and we'll go ahead and add the stream. Okay, Steve says yes, just jogging, just with jogging. Okay. Let me get out of reset here and I'm going to hit my tab key on my keyboard and that's going to open up my MPG window. Okay. Here is where we have, you need to make sure that the shuttle mode and jog mode are set. Okay. I've got a yellow LED right here. Jog mode in this space right here is for continuous. Okay. Make sure that that is the LED. The LED is set there. Not in step mode. Okay. And here is your jog rate, 100%. So I'll hit tab to come back out of there. If I go to jog it, I don't know if it's going to let me do it or not. Yes, it will. Okay. If I jog over this way, it's going to jog at this rate. Nope, that's feed rate. That would be my rapid rate. Let me get into, got to spend so long since I've used What is my rapid rate? My rapid rate from my x-axis is 120 inches per minute. So that is the rapid rate. Cancel. So when I use my cursor left or cursor right keys, it should be moving at 120 inches per minute. Okay? The whole way. If that isn't happening and it's all of your axes, check for binding. You may have something too tight. I don't know what kind of machine you have. Is it belt drive? Is it lead screw driven? Is it rack and pinion? I don't know. If it's a belt drive, check the belt tensions. If your belts are too tight, that could do it. It could just be binding up. Let's see here. Steve A.L. Peleg says, are you jogging using a continuous keyboard press, or are you jumping using a mouse or pendant? If it's a keyboard, maybe some feature like sticky keys is involved. I guess that's a possibility. It could also be crud down in the keyboard. So let's see here. Now, I don't know if this is La Roast or LA Roast. Your thoughts on using fine tapered ball nose bits as V bits in V carve? It depends on what you're doing. Such as the Amana 46280, 46473 for detailed inlays. What's your favorite bit for fine detailed inlays? I've not yet done a fine detailed inlay. My favorite bit is a 15-degree V bit so far. And that's for epoxy inlays. Okay. I have not used a tapered ball nose as a V-bit for inlays. I know a lot of people do. Go for the finest tip you can get, because you're still going to have an issue with, on your male parts that have outside corners, it's going to do just fine. On your female with inside corners, you will still have a radius where the tip of that bit cut into that inside corner. With a 15-degree V-bit, I don't have that issue. So that's my favorite, a 15-degree V-bit. Let's see. It does this both on a pendant and using the screen with Mach 3. Okay. What brand of machine do you have? I would contact their tech support. I mean, this is what they do. If it's a generic, like a 3018 or something like that, go over to the mock support forum and kind of search there and see if you can find somebody who's had a similar issue. But it's sounding to me like it's just strange that would be all three axes. It sounds like something is binding up, you know, but that doesn't sound right. But I would get a hold of tech support for your machine and explain the issue to them. It may be you just have something tightened up too tight. And that's especially true with belt drives. It's easy to get belts too tight. One of the reasons why I'm not much for them. Let's see here. I think we've got everything caught up, and it's a good thing too, because we're a little bit over. Before we go, before I say goodbye, I would like to give a special shout out to my buddy Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, and I'm scrolling profusely to find where he popped into the chat. I'm proud to call Steve a friend of mine. He runs a tidy ship over there at Harneal Media, and he's a sponsor of MarkLindsayCNC.com. If you are thinking about a website, if you're thinking about opening a web store, there is nobody I will recommend other than Steve. He's good at what he does. He's competitively priced, and it's 100% personalized service. When you're dealing with Harneo Media, you're dealing with Steve, always. Not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere. You're talking with Steve every time. I'm proud to call him a friend of mine, and I'm very happy that he has decided to sponsor Mark Lindsay CNC.com. Thank you very much, Steve, for everything you do. Channel members. Oh, wait a minute. Channel members, hold on. This wasn't a problem until I loaded Mach 3 into a new computer. Do you have access to the old computer? If you have access to the old computer, get into your C drive, I believe it is, Windows C drive, the main hard drive. Just go into C, put in a thumb drive into it. I'm having power fluctuations here. Don't know if you can see that. Put in a flash drive into your computer, copy that entire Mach 3 folder over to that flash drive. Go to the new computer that you have Mach 3 loaded into, go into that C drive, delete that Mach 3 or rename that Mach 3 folder if you prefer, and transfer that Mach 3 folder onto the C drive. That takes all of your settings, all of your XML files, all of everything. That's also a great way to back up Mach 3. Just copy that entire Mach 3 folder onto a flash drive and put it in your fireproof security box in the house. And Mach 3 is backed up. So that could be a factor. So channel members, that's where I was. Channel members, remember, members only live stream tomorrow. We got a lot of unfinished business. Brooks Martin and I have been having an email thread for a few weeks now. I've already talked a little bit and I've shared with you guys a little bit about tape splitting and splitting up long G-code files into more manageable chunks. Brooks is at it again, and we're going to get into it tomorrow evening, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. Check the community tab here on my YouTube channel for the link. If you don't know what I'm talking about, would like to become a channel member, like Roger did earlier. Where you go? There you are, like Roger did earlier. Right next to the subscribe button down below, you'll see a join button. Click that button and a panel will pop up, a video will play, tell you all about channel membership. It's a great group of people. I have a lot of fun with them. And I'm very, very proud to have all these folks as channel members. Okay, channel members, see you tomorrow. I may have a video next week, depending upon how the next couple of days goes. We're gonna see. I'm shooting for it. We'll see. If not, we'll do another open Q&A. So bring your Qs because that's how this works, and I'll try to give you some A's. Until then, have a great rest of your Sunday. Now go do something cool, even if it's just sit by the pool, jump in the water, splash around a bit. Take the time to run through the sprinkler. That still works. I know it's summer, it's hot. Go have some fun. See you next week. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your Sunday.